Social on the sidelines, we are back and better than ever. What is good, Amara Baptist?
Hey, we have video now.
This is crazy. It's been a year and now we're on video and everything has changed. Brand new, new year, new us, and we even have a new partner. Social on the sidelines is now presented by Zoom. Shout out Zoom.
Attention is currency. Monetize with Zoom. Find them on Twitter at Zoom.
We
Z.
really appreciate
Oh, I was
our
giving.
friends over at Zoom. You're good. You're good. It's the first time we've done this in a while. It's and we're on video too. Like we can't cover any of the mess ups of which there are a lot. Uh, it's all good. Shout out to our friends over at Zoom for sponsoring and having us come back. We're really excited about this. Um, Amara, what is new with you? It's been like a year.
Man, I know. It's. I just want to talk about the flex, the low key flex of your shoes and the setup behind you.
New
So
apartment.
I see what you're doing. I am in Chicago right now. We play the Bulls tonight, so yeah, it's been an interesting year to say the least. Obviously, COVID and the pandemic and things changed a ton. With our work during the pandemic, it was a lot more work. I think we can agree on for the digital side of things. I went to the bubble, so that was awesome. Yeah, it feels like it's been 5 years since so much has happened.
Right.
But how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I wanted to get started by, first of all, talking about the bubble, but then everything in between. And for those who have not tuned into Social on the Sidelines and our first timers, thank you for joining us. And for those that are returning, you're the reason we are returning. Like people, Amara and I texted after we were like, we might do this, we might come back. And we were super honored and thrilled about everyone saying that they loved the show. And then when we announced that we were coming back, like me and Amara were texting, like, "Oh my god, this is wild. We thought we were trash, which we are, or I am at least. Amara's not trash. I'm trash. Uh, but no, we're really excited about it, and I miss these conversations because I get to learn about Amara's life alongside all of you all, but also we get to interview some really cool people. So for those that don't know, this show is all about getting to know how people got into the industry, what's going on in the industry, in social media and sports. But today, because it's been so long, Amara and I are just going to focus on us for a second and what's been going on with us. On that note, Amara, you got to tell us about the bubble experience and how that was.
Yeah. So the bubble, I went home to LA after the pandemic started in what, February, March? I can't remember.
March, yeah.
I went home in May, spent some time with my family because it was really lonely. I'm an introvert to a certain degree, but it was definitely like living alone and not having any contact was tough. So I went home with my family for a little bit and found out I was going to the bubble. So I was super pumped. Left with the team, and it was just a wild experience. Just we had to quarantine for 48 hours in our hotel rooms when we got there. We were at the yacht club. Shout out the yacht club, the most lit of all the hotels. Trust me, I have confirmation. Um, so yeah, it was really cool. Just being embedded with the team, and especially like the basketball side of the team, like our GM and our assistant GM, and just people that I don't normally spend a ton of time with. We were literally just all in there together, doing pretty much everything together. Um, so it was a great experience, and it was really wild because I remember once we were allowed to go to other people's hotels. The Grizzlies were at the Grand Floridian, so I had obviously I have a ton of friends on the Grizzlies. So I go and like I'm totally lost because it's a huge hotel. I like walk in, I'm like I don't know where I am, what is going on. And the first people I see are James Harden and Russell Westbrook, like walking towards me. I was like, I don't know if I don't know what to do. Do I say hello? And they're like, Hey, what's up? How you doing? And I was like, Hey, like just kind of squeaked high and just like walked through. But it was wild, just like knowing that all the people in the bubble were in your line of work and working for teams or athletes, and everybody was just going through the same new experience together. It was really really cool, and obviously it was fun for us. Every game was legitimately like a heart attack. So
Right.
it was a ride.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed you didn't ask Russ and James to join Social on the Sidelines, but it is what it is. I
I mean,
understand,
I feel like I could just, we're at that point where I can just be like,
Yeah,
hey, Russ, oh, we're going to Washington. Perfect. I can just say hello,
yeah,
be
just hit
like,
them up.
you waved at me one time. Would you like to join our show? What else are you doing right
Right?
now? Like,
Exactly. There's nothing else going on.
all
You mentioned one thing that I want to hit on, and well, of course, get into everything that we can in between. But a lot of the focus now during this pandemic period has been on digital and social, and specifically our departments, because frankly, without a majority of the NBA having fans in arenas, and of course the bubble experience, and then the WNBA bubble in between on our side too, like a lot of the focus has been on social from a monetization aspect, from the front lines of what we were doing in terms of activism and social justice, and just about everything in between. So I'm curious, what that has looked like for you in terms of if things changed really, or if it was just more of trying to be intentional about how you went about the Trailblazers as social. Did anything change from a strategy standpoint for you?
I mean, I think a lot of change thing a lot wow, that was not a correct sentence. A lot of things changed because it was just such a new thing. Like I've never been through a pandemic like this, that affected my work. So I think it was like day by day and kind of just going with the flow. When games stopped, we didn't know what was going to happen, how long the league was going to be stopped. So we kind of just waited a bit and then we were like, okay, what if we just posted video highlights of, we're playing the Grizzlies, so let's do a playoff game where CJ dropped 40, like a throwback on the days that we're playing those teams. And then as far as like everything else, especially partnership stuff, I mean, they still had contracts to be fulfilled and we didn't know if we didn't know about the bubble. We didn't know that anything was going to happen. So we had to figure out a way to transition all of our promised content to partnerships, and cleverly put it in, our strategy. So it was definitely a lot. I'm really proud of, our team and you guys did an amazing job, just handling obviously, George Floyd's death, and that was in your city. So I think like on that note, do you want to talk a little bit about how you handled that, and was that, an organizational discussion, or how did you go about that?
No, it's a really good question, and coincidentally at the time I've moved now, but for the past 2 years prior to this move in this apartment, Farheen and I lived downtown, pretty much a mile from the site of the murder, and so right afterwards, we were kind of in the heart of all the protests, all the rallies, and all of that. And one thing that was amazing to see was obviously the outpouring of support from the community. But Faheen and I went down to one of the protests, and we had seen there was no directive from the organization to like take part in this, but we had seen so many people within the organization, from the front office to just people that we work with on the business side, and that was heartwarming for me to see. And then the way in which we approached that, in terms of how we covered it on social media, the first thing that we thought about was it has to be natural, right? Like you can't, it has to be true to who we are, and there's not content that can solve for that. It's either you're about it as an organization or you're not. And Steven Jackson came into Minneapolis and spoke following the murder alongside Jamie Foxx and some other individuals as well. And Karl Anthony Towns and Josh Okogie were there. So at the heart of it, it's very true to what our players stand for, and as part of that, who we are, because it's in our community. And it has to be kind of an actions over words thing, is what was said within the organization, and that made me feel really good about where I worked and who I worked with, because it was not a matter of are we going to do anything. It's how are we going to help this situation. I never questioned if we were going to speak on it, or if we would be willing to say X or Y, because again, it happened in our community. It's something that time and time again, I think the organization has taken, been on the right side of history with. and that's important. You know, at the end of the day, when you look back on those situations, you got to be on the right side of what's right, and it's not, especially in the NBA and the WNBA, when 80% of our players are, black, and frankly, the diversity on the business side needs to continue to widen, and be more inclusive. It's not really up for debate, and a lot of people from the noise on social media spoke. Obviously, you saw a lot of toxicity in terms of opposition, and you can't play being in the middle. Like, you can't support the players and the sport, but not who they are as people and equal human rights for them. Like, that's not a political thing. It's just human rights.
Yeah.
So I was proud to be part of the organization, and I continue to be proud to be part of the organization during that time, and all the things in between. On a little bit of a different note, as that was going on, obviously the pandemic very soon after hit, and for a lot of us in the social industry, but just any industry at large, we didn't know what that meant for our jobs. I remember talking to the other people within the industry and even within our organization, and we were unsure of what would happen from our job standpoint, right? Like, it was a scary time to be in. So I'm curious how you kind of maneuvered that in terms of like your mental state, but then also there were some tough decisions made, and a lot of people lost their jobs throughout the pandemic. So there was a lot of free agents in our industry and just in general looking for work, and obviously that was something, a lot of friends lost positions as well. So just talking about overall that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate, like, I think the NBA did a great job handling everything, but I think the WNBA is just incredible. Just the women that are constantly fighting for social justice. I don't think they get enough credit, and
Agreed.
I just wanted to shout them out because I think they're amazing. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a tough time. It still is tough, because with fans not in the building, that's a hit. That's a lot of money lost, and a lot of people, like you said, that I know on the internet, that I know personally, lost their jobs. And I think my mental state kind of transitioned from fear of just the world, like what was going on, anxiety, because you just, not even about my personal job, just like about the health of my family, my mom, my dad, people I love. And then it kind of went to just being really grateful, because, we have jobs that we love, and there's so many people that don't have jobs still that are unemployed. So I think just keeping like being grateful at the front of my mind always throughout this. But I do want to say, like, the toxicity from a social justice perspective was really bothered me. I think just the political climate in general, you're right. Like, you can't be in the middle. It's either the right or the wrong side, in my opinion, especially when it comes to black people of color, or black men and women being murdered by police. Like, it's not like a political statement to be like, this should not happen. It's just
Right.
ridiculous that that's even said. So there was a lot of toxic comments, and I had the support from my bosses and the higher ups to kind of push back on that and be like, hey, this isn't really up for debate, so like, unfollow. Like, we're not going to stop talking about this. And Dame was at the front of a protest, and it's just, for me, I know what I believe, and thankfully that is in line with what the organization believes, because it would be really hard to be silent during that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think just like checking in on my coworkers to make sure people are doing okay, because it is, isolation, that's tough.
Yep.
And plus, with everything going on in the world, I think, you have to check in even on your strongest friends. So that's just been something that I, have been doing and trying to make a priority of still, because it's still tough. It's still tough right now.
said there, amongst everything else, they were all great points, but especially the last point, about checking in on people. I can say for myself personally, it was a very difficult time mentally, not only, with everything that was going on in our city, but also, with the pandemic. And, at the start of the year, I always try to set some goals for myself. And it's a really difficult time to think about, well, I need to be better at X, Y, and Z. For me, I had to take a step back and, again, like yourself, be grateful for the position that I was in, not only professionally, but just as a human being, having my health and having my family's health. You know, I'm thankful to God for that. But it was really hard when you think about still going to work every day and bringing your best, professionally, while we're all locked down and not really able to see our loved ones or our friends or our family for the most part. It was a really difficult thing, for me to kind of deal with, and I think a lot of the rest of the world as well, because you're supposed to bring that, bright face and, your best creative mind, especially in this role, to it every day. And it was really hard. Like, I talked to members on my team, I talked to people within the organization, within the industry, and I feel like a lot of people felt the same way. And there was no right answer, right? Like, the only answer that we came to was like, getting through this is enough. And I wanted to reiterate that, because I was so often in places like, oh, I didn't accomplish this. When we hit 2021 pretty much a month ago, I look back and I accomplished nothing that I said I was going to do. And that, to me, initially was depressing, because it's like, it seems like I wasted a year of my life. But when I look back on it, and when I, in hindsight, when I think about all those things, I learned a lot about life in general, and what we need to, be grateful for, and be cognizant of, that we have going on, rather than just focusing on all the negative parts of, I didn't do this, I didn't get this, I didn't improve myself in this certain category. Again, I just want to reiterate to everyone, like, for me, and I think for a lot of other people, just getting through that was and is enough, and we're obviously not out of it yet. So some of those thoughts still remain. Like, some weeks, I'm in a much worse place than I am in other weeks, and there's nothing that really, impacts that outside of myself and how I approach the day. So I just need to get, into a better, consistent place in terms of, like you said, being more grateful for being able to wake up, frankly, every day that I can. So yeah, I'm curious, you hit on the mental side a little bit, but how you kind of, dealt with everything, and how you were mentally throughout this period that's still ongoing.
Yeah, I think I went through like the first half of quarantine was honestly kind of refreshing in a way, because I felt like I needed to slow down, but I couldn't because of work, and I needed to take a breath, but I couldn't. Um, and I kind of got into a groove. Like, I was like, oh man, this is the first time where I feel like I have like a routine where I can get enough sleep and exercise, consistently, and like connect with my faith more. And that part really kept me going, was like just being consistent with reading the Bible and like listening to sermons and just like talking to friends on FaceTime that I have not talked to. Like, my best friend in California, her name's Ashley. And we, every Sunday, we would talk, and we would have like a 2-hour FaceTime. And it was so refreshing. And I feel like you take those things for granted in like the chaos of a busy world. So just connecting with people, and like, Zoom family calls, I feel like that would never have happened if we weren't
Right.
in it. Like, it's sad it takes a global pandemic to like connect
Yep.
with people you love, but I think that first half was like simultaneously hard and also refreshing. And then the bubble was really nice, because I had connection, and I was alone for so long, that just being around people that I, love and care about, and hugging people, and like not feeling like, whatever. Then coming out of the bubble was hard, because you go from being around people every single day, not honestly not worrying about the virus at all, because you felt you were safe in this controlled environment. And then you get out, and I remember I went grocery shopping, and I was like, I'm scared, because you were in this controlled environment for, I think we were there almost 60 days, and you go out into the real world, and you're like, wow, this is still very bad, and this is still very much a thing. Um, and then it's like isolation again. So I think for me, I kind of just went through like it was a bit of a roller coaster, but um, consistently making time for self care was like a big priority for me. And maybe self care was watching 3 hours of 90 Day Fiance. Like I think which it was a lot of the time. And, I think like to your point, not judging yourself of like taking the time that you need. And yeah, maybe that's not the most productive use of my 3 hours, but man, I felt a lot better after doing it. And then I can, you know, to not shame yourself and give yourself grace during this period, I think is really important. And it kind of bothered me when I saw posts on Instagram from people that were like, if you didn't take this time to better yourself and blah blah blah. I'm like, that's quite frankly BS. Like that's BS.
Right.
Don't shame people for handling a freaking global pandemic. Like
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat, and I think the one thing that I really realized during this time is that everyone's experience is different, right? Like we do very similar things in terms of professional work, but our experiences can be, and it's okay for them to be different. Like there's some people that really thrive off, only focusing on bettering themselves, and I think in a past 2 or 3 years ago, if you would have asked me, I think I would have been naive enough to think like that was the way to judge my year. And to
Yeah.
some degree, like I told you, I felt like a failure because there was so much that I
Right.
didn't do. But I would putting that on anyone else and being like, well, you didn't do this,
Right.
so your year was trash. That's never the right way to go about anything. And I think speaks to just being compassionate for others. That's another thing throughout this period. Like you said, being there for people is uber important, and making anyone feel like their experience is less, or they're less valued, was not the right approach, and is not the right approach during this period or any period. So
Yeah.
on a little bit of a different note, because we're so now used to working from home and being throughout this, obviously on the digital side of things. I don't know about you, but for me, earlier on in my career, it was something that I kind of pushed for more often. Not a permanent work from home place, but because of the nature of our jobs, and because we are, pretty much always online to some degree. We're working quite a bit, and we have games as well, so it's longer days. It was something that I pushed for in the past, but now being in it every day, there is elements of that being in the office that I do really miss. Although there are advantages and disadvantages to working from home. So I'm curious to see, what you think of this experience thus far, and if it's something you hope continues, or are there elements in which you want to go back? I'm just curious to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah. I think. Are you muting yourself every time? That's really smart. Okay. Sorry. I have always kind of thought that working from home is something that I would want permanently, like you said. I think there's a lot of benefits. I think like just being able to plan your day better. Like I feel like sometimes I would finish my work at let's say like 11:30, and then I feel like I have to be at my desk until 5 on, not on a game day. When at home, if I'm done with my work, I can go grocery shopping, or I can do laundry, or I can like multitask to kind of do the things that when you're traveling full time with a team is really hard to get done when you're in the office. But obviously I do miss like the camaraderie and being around, my coworkers. I think meetings are tough. Zoom is like fine, but I definitely feel like there's something missing.
Right.
So I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I wouldn't be mad if it was like work from home half the time, like 2 or 3 days a week, and then go into the office. But honestly, like I am scared to like go back into an
Yeah.
office setting right now. It feels like it's too soon, and I think the
Right.
Blazers feel the same because we haven't really talked about a time returning.
Yeah.
It also depends in the city because like Portland is pretty strict right now. California is really strict, and then you have like Texas, Florida, who you like. We were in Houston, and like literally, I took a walk, and like every single person there was not a mask in sight, and like there were restaurants. I was like, this is. I feel like I'm in a different world, but okay, cool.
Right.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't mind working from home.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm in the same boat. I think early on, throughout the pandemic, the first few months, I'm like, okay, this is not the pandemic itself, but the environment which allowed us to work from home. Like that's awesome. I get to, like you said, spend some time, cook some breakfast, spend more time with my wife. We got a new
Mhm.
cat. Shout out Churro. That's new since the last podcast. So spend some time for myself and like work out in the morning or do groceries at lunch. Like those were things. A lot of people who might not be in the industry might not realize like you have to, especially when you're working in the office and you're attending games and you're traveling on the road, like you really have to plan when you can go to the grocery store, when you can get a haircut, when you can go for a walk, when you can work out, like all of those things that are things that you have to be cognizant of. And I think one really refreshing thing about this work from home lifestyle from a professional standpoint is being able to spend a little bit more time to be you at home and spend time with the people you're around, if you have that ability. So that's nice. Like you said, I think there's a lot of scenarios in which, there are elements that I miss. I even think about game night right now. Like I sit on one of the staircases in between our rows at Target Center to like shoot the game, and Parker, who's usually doing our social media graphics, is up at the top of the section, and Taylor, who was our social media coordinator, who's usually tweeting the game and covering live, she's either at home or on another side. And then Cody, who's our social media manager, he's on the baseline. So like that interpersonal reaction outside of sending each other Slack messages and being like, hey, this photo is going up. Hey, we're posting on this platform. Like that's something that I do miss because, that really cool feeling of like, yo, I got this. Can you edit this? Handing those things off and like spending a little bit more time together. That's one of the really fun parts about game nights
Yeah.
that I miss a lot. And then the fan element too, of course,
Yep.
like you said, I don't I don't know when is going to be a time in which we're all comfortable enough about bringing that back fully. It hasn't been the case thus far, but that it's been kind of eerie, like going into an arena and covering a game. And for the most part, I think there's only 8 teams that have some semblance of fans in arenas. I haven't seen any others, but like at Target Center, when I go in and I cover a game, like everything else is the same, right? Like the live experience, our in arena team does a great job, still bringing like energy. The players are obviously doing their thing, but then not having fans to like react. The crowd noise and stuff is unique for sure. That the in arena team is able to like bring some semblance of energy, but there is an element. It's kind of eerie, like walking in and seeing nobody.
Yeah, um it was interesting like being in the bubble. For some reason, I think it's because it was so small, like it was such a small room.
Yep,
It was really intense. Like it felt like you felt the energy of like you could hear everything. The benches were going wild. Like I don't know what it was, but being in like huge arenas, and I think like, shout out our arena team. They do a really good job with fan noise, like fake fan noise, and it sounds almost real, but it's still you can't like get that energy in a huge arena that's just empty. So yeah, it's definitely different. And I wonder how that affects players because if I feel a difference, like it's tough getting energy to play for an empty arena. It's kind of weird. But we were in Houston and they had fans, and it was definitely different. Like you could tell, like it was definitely different. Oh,
for
maybe
sure.
that's why the Utah Jazz are so good this year. The
11
fans.
game win streak as of right now. Yeah,
They're crushing it. Shout out
you know,
Angie.
yeah. Shout out Angie and team. They've been doing some great stuff. So on a final note, unless you had another thought to close this out, we haven't obviously had one of these in quite some time, and it's been pretty. I think it's been like a year. So I'm curious, from a professional standpoint, like what's been the coolest thing that you've been able to work on or post or do, like from your professional standpoint?
Ooh. I'm gonna go with the I think just the bubble experience, honestly. Like I think just being there to capture those moments and um try and bring fans into that experience through social was something that was really unique and something that I was nervous about doing because I didn't know, each team sent one content person. So it was definitely like, oh crap, I have to like crush this.
Yeah.
Like no pressure. But yeah, that was really cool. And I'm trying to think what else. I'm really proud of our DEI team, diversity, equity, and inclusion team, just how they've been handling and leading the charge on our social justice program. And something that I think, I'm really proud of my coworker Adam and I for our last game versus the Lakers. Instead of doing like a normal final score, like our caption was, crap, I'm going to butcher it, but it was like, please don't forget Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and many other families are still seeking justice. Something to that effect. That's not exactly what it was. And during the game, we actually um, posted petitions that were unique to Oregon for people that were murdered by the police or murdered because they were transgender. And we used our platform to kind of push people to those petitions. And I think that was really special to be a part of and was a really big group effort. So that was something I'm proud of.
Yeah, for sure. On a similar note, on my end, you know, being so close to everything that was going on, and again, it wasn't a content opportunity. It was literally just
Right.
seeing, our organization being part of it. Like, we were able to see, like I said, some players throughout the protest, a lot of organizational executives, just business side employees throughout all that. So that was really cool. And again, it's not necessarily a specific piece of work, but I was pretty proud to be part of this organization and to call this my hometown team. On the court, there hasn't necessarily been a ton of wins for us this season, but one thing that we've seen is that effect and kind of the closeness that this team has and the organization has. Like, despite all of that, I'm still proud to work here, right? So that's really cool. And then as you mentioned, the WNBA side has been pretty much a leader in social justice initiatives far before the season, right? Like the Lynx were standing up for what's right years ago, and so being able to see that in the WNBA bubble, which our social media manager Cody was able to be a part of down in Bradenton, Florida. That was really cool to get to even see that from a distance and be part of that to some degree. And then I don't know if I ever got to, I don't know where our last episode ended at. I don't know if it was before or after the trade deadline, but like the two cool pieces of work, like actual things that we posted that I was really excited about above and beyond the past examples were when we traded for D'Lo. I think, the team knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool experience. Like, essentially our social team and we planned for an unknown. We had no clue whether we were going to trade or not, but we had like a plan in place and we executed the hell out of it, which was really cool to see. And then start to this season, we did some really cool stuff. Our animation team has done some really cool stuff to start the season. Joe and Doug on our animation team. We hired an illustrator to remake like a Goosebumps cover. And then we hired a drone pilot whose name is Jay Christensen to do this really cool, drone fly through the arena that my boss Eric ideated and kind of executed alongside our in-arena team. So those were really cool pieces of content that kind of took off, and I was proud to be part of for sure. So yeah, that was mine.
Cool. I'm trying to think of like other things, but I feel like my brain right now is just not working.
You're good. It's game day for you.
Yeah, game day.
Uh, any last thoughts before we call it for this return to social on the sidelines?
I just want to
What,
pull.
what was that? I have never been able to see that.
Is
All
an
right,
eyebrow.
hold up. I got some for y'all. And the listeners who listen on the podcast will not be able to see this, but because you just did that, I gotta, okay, watch this eyebrow, okay? Just keep watching it. It's worth it. I promise. I think.
Why does it do that? I don't like
I don't
it.
know.
I don't
My
like it. Why?
my nos I don't know. I don't know how or when I found that out, but like for the listeners at home, like I raise one eyebrow and the other one starts like going nuts and going
You
crazy, and my
literally
nostril starts twitching.
you've
What?
missed the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So you should watch the video.
Yeah, go watch the video. Yeah, no, my eyebrows can do that, so that's pretty wild. I don't even know where I was at. Like I saw it myself and I was scared of myself. What was even my train of thought there? You shook your eyebrows, and that somebody make that a gif. Amara's going wild.
I just wanted to poll our listeners. If you've listened for this long, God bless you, because it's should I get a Peloton? Because
Yes. You don't even got to poll the listeners. Yes.
I am obsessed.
Peloton, sponsor us.
Yo, Peloton, I love you.
Look,
I did a Cody class this morning.
I have never.
Obsessed.
Have you done Alex Toussaint yet?
Yeah, he murdered me the other day.
Yeah, he always murders me. Like even when it's low impact, I'm like, why are you doing this to me? I said low impact.
I literally was like, is this advanced? Like, I can't do anything right now. Like, this is horrible. It's so good.
Yeah.
Sponsor.
Yes. No, Peloton is legit. You should absolutely. Oh, here's a poll for y'all. Is it Peloton or Peloton? Or
it's
what?
Neither. Peloton.
What is it? I can't say it. I can Peloton.
Peloton. Okay. Right?
I can never say it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm asking you.
Yeah, it's Peloton, I think. Now I'm questioning everything. I don't know.
Shook.
Let us know.
And also on that note, we are thinking about potentially having a live element to this at some point. So until that point, let us know who you want our guest to be. We have a good idea of who the next guest might be. But of course, always hit us up. And we are so happy to be back for Social on the Sidelines. Shout out Zoom for partnering us. Shout out y'all for listening. Shout out Amara's eyebrows and my weird eyebrow flex. And Peloton. Shout out to y'all. Peloton. All right. Thanks for having us, y'all. And thanks for listening.